Hello, thank you for joining today. My name's Kira, and I'm a children's wellbeing practitioner that works for Rise Mental Health Support Team. And I'm joined here today by my colleague Naomi for a webinar for parents all around how to talk about mental health. So just some housekeeping before we begin. For this webinar, cameras and microphones are disabled. However, there is a Q&A function that is available, and Naomi will be monitoring that throughout. So if you do have any questions, feel free to pop that in. If you do have any questions or queries following the session, you can email risenortheast@childrenssociety.org.uk. And just so you're aware, this session today is being recorded and will be later uploaded to YouTube. So just to go over some aims for the webinar today. Firstly, it is to understand what mental health difficulties are, to learn about the benefits of talking about mental health, and finally, to learn strategies for having successful conversations about mental health. So we'll begin with talking about what is mental health. So mental health is all about our feelings, our thoughts, and our emotions. In the same way that we all have physical health, we all have mental health. We all have feelings that come and go every day, and sometimes these can feel quite strong, but they don't stay for a long time, and these feelings are completely normal. However, for some people, these feelings can be intense at times and can last a long time. This can stop us from doing what we want or stop us from enjoying our lives. These kind of feelings might be described as mental health difficulties. So what makes our emotions feel more intense? And this is not an exhaustive list, but this is some common things that can influence this. So we've got going through a big change. So this could be moving house, moving schools, changes in family dynamics. We've got ignoring our emotions. So if we kind of keep it inside, bottle that up, it can make them more intense. Unhealthy relationships, feeling physically unwell, feeling tired or having little energy, fallouts with siblings, friends, parents or carers, feeling lonely or isolated, feeling hungry or thirsty. So we've got a video here which explains a bit more about why we have big emotions in relation to the brain. So I'm going to play that. It's about 5 minutes.
Your brain is powerful and strong. It helps you remember that 2 plus 2 equals 4, makes you blink and breathe without even thinking, and even helps you play your favorite video games. But it's so much more than that, too. Your brain has 3 main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. It also has 2 sides, a left and a right, 4 lobes, the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. And then each of these lobes can be broken down even more into areas that have specific jobs. Yowza, that's a lot of pieces. Let's see if we can make it a bit easier to understand. You can think of your brain kind of like a 2-story house. In this house, there's an upstairs and a downstairs. The upstairs and downstairs brains both have very important jobs. Your downstairs brain's job is to keep you safe. It is responsible for things like breathing, super strong emotions like anger and fear, and watching out for danger. The upstairs brain's job is to help you think. Yep, that's right. Its job is to help you problem solve, learn, and make good decisions. A house wouldn't be a home without people inside, right? Your brain has some characters in it that play a really important role in what you're thinking, feeling, and doing. Let's talk about the characters in the downstairs brain first. Down here, you have alerting Annie. She lets us know if there's danger nearby. Angry Albert, he responds really quickly with, you guessed it, anger. And frightened Fred, he's pretty much scared of everything, but it's because he wants to keep us safe. Then there's the boss. This is Big Boss Bob. His job is to take information from Albert, Annie, and Fred and react. There is no thinking involved. He just listens to them, and if they say danger is nearby, he acts super fast. Bob does this in 3 different ways: fight, flight, or freeze. Your upstairs brain has some characters in it too. Up here, you have problem-solving Patty. She helps recognize problems and come up with solutions. Calming Carl, his job is to help us calm down when we're upset. Flexible Felix, he allows us to go with the flow. And focusing Frank, he allows us to pay attention and learn. All of these characters don't act super fast. It takes time for them to stop and think before doing anything. Any house with an upstairs and downstairs has a staircase that connects them, right? So does your brain house. We need both the upstairs and downstairs brains to work together. When the brain's staircase is built and strong, our characters can move up and down the staircase to share information. This allows the upstairs brain to try and make sense of strong emotions from Albert, Annie, and Fred, and try to figure out how to help. But it's not always that easy. You see, even though your downstairs brain is done being built when you're born, your upstairs brain is under construction until you're in your mid-20s, which means your staircase can be kind of fragile as a kid. And Bob is kind of bossy, so when he thinks that danger is around, he may flip a switch to break your staircase in order to keep you safe, even when there's no actual danger around. Let's look at it this way. Let's pretend that you are out at recess. The sun is shining, it's nice and warm out, and you're playing with your friends. All of a sudden, a cute little kitten wanders on the playground. Annie, Fred, and Albert are going to say, "Aw, look at that cute kitten." Bob will send a message upstairs to say, "Everyone, look, it's a cute little kitten." Bob doesn't sense any danger, so problem-solving Patty is able to stop and think about what to do next. Patty decides that you should probably go and tell the teacher that the kitten is on the playground. Maybe it's lost and your teacher can help get it home. Awesome! The upstairs and downstairs brain worked together to solve the problem. Now, let's take the same day at recess, but add something different. Instead of a kitten that shows up, a giant T-Rex stomps onto the scene. Annie immediately goes over to Bob and says, Bob, we have a problem." Fred does the same thing, saying, "Ah, there's a dinosaur on the playground." Bob has no time to go upstairs so Patty can figure out what to do. Instead, he flips the switch to break the staircase and responds super fast by having you run away, flight, and hide, freeze, inside of the school. So clearly Bob is really good at acting fast to keep us safe. Unfortunately, your brain, and Bob in particular, cannot tell the difference between a hard question on a math test and a dinosaur on the playground, especially when Bob flips his switch to break the staircase. But guess what? You can make your staircase stronger by practicing calming strategies like deep breathing and learning how to relax your muscles. The more you practice these when you feel good, the more likely Bob is to respond to them when your feelings get too big. Trusted adults can also act as carpenters for your broken staircase, rebuilding each step to help Bob reach Patty and solve the problem together. Teachers and parents, for more information about the upstairs and downstairs brain, visit selsketches.com. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified when the next Sketches video releases. Thanks.
Okay, so now that we kind of understand why we might have big emotions and how this might lead to us reacting in certain ways, I want to introduce you to the mental health cycle. So there are 3 main aspects to our mental health, which is our thoughts, emotions, and behaviours, which you saw in the previous video. So our mental health flows in this cycle. And at Rise, we teach young people that one part of this cycle can significantly impact the rest of it. So if we're having maybe unhelpful thoughts, it might make us feel a certain way and then lead to us acting in certain ways, maybe avoiding situations or using unhelpful coping strategies. So there's some common misconceptions among parents when it comes to talking about mental health. And these are some examples of some common ones that we come across. So we've got, if I talk about it, I'll put ideas in their head. I don't know how to talk about it. I don't want to open up something I'm not equipped to deal with. My child is too young for these conversations, and they'll talk to me if something is wrong. So, like we said, we know that many of us can avoid these conversations, and that's a very human response. It's absolutely not a blaming to blame anyone, but to help build understanding. So we've got some information here around what can happen when we don't talk about mental health. So firstly, when children don't have a space to talk about feelings, they can often hold their emotions inside. They can end up feeling very alone with big emotions, even when they're surrounded by people who care deeply about them. If we're not talking about mental health openly, we might not spot early signs that a child is struggling. Silence doesn't make the feelings disappear, it can just make them harder to see. When no one talks about emotions, children might assume that they're not supposed to feel certain things. This can create shame, which makes it harder for them to reach out for help. And if a child doesn't feel able to talk to a trusted adult, they often turn to things like the internet, peers, or social media. And as we all know, the information they find isn't always safe or accurate. And finally, without guidance, children try to cope in the only way they know how, and sometimes those strategies can increase risk rather than reduce. Talking early helps us guide them towards safer ways to managing distress. The key message here is that talking about mental health doesn't create problems, it creates openness and safety. And we can now have a chat about what happens when we do talk about mental health. It's important to acknowledge that this isn't about having perfect conversations, it's simply about creating a space for children to share what's going on inside. So firstly, when we talk openly, children learn that feelings are not something to hide. They start to understand that emotions are normal and that struggling does not mean something's wrong with them. Talking gives children the language they need. Instead of saying, I'm fine, when they're not or they're acting out, they can start to name what they're feeling, and that's a huge step. When conversations are already happening, it becomes much easier to spot when something isn't quite right. Children are more likely to mention small worries before they become big ones. Talking helps us guide children towards safer, more effective ways of managing difficult emotions. It also shows them that they don't have to figure everything out alone. And finally, when mental health is something we talk about regularly, just like physical health, it creates a family culture where children feel safe, understood, and connected. The key idea here is that talking doesn't magically fix everything, but it helps. It opens the door to support, understanding, and connection. So we're going to move on to how do we talk to our children about mental health. And I want to start with talking about how to help children name their emotions, because for many children, that can be the hardest part, and not having words to describe what they're feeling. This can help them to understand it. I want to show you a short video that might be helpful for children as well, especially younger ones. As you watch, have a think about how this might look with your child and what language they might use and how this could help them to feel understood.
Have you ever gone from feeling focused and calm one moment to feeling totally out of control the next? Our emotions are around us all the time. We can feel happy, sad, mad, worried, shy, confident, calm, silly, loved. The list literally goes on and on. Some feelings make us feel good on the inside, while others leave us feeling pretty lousy, but they are always there, and all of them are totally normal. Our feelings are a lot like the wind. The wind might always be blowing, but you may not notice that it's there until you focus your attention on how it rustles the leaves on a tree, how it feels against your skin, how it's blowing your hair, or until it completely blows you over. Focusing on our feelings means not only recognizing and naming them, but also focusing our attention on our bodies from the smallest trickle of happiness to the largest burst of anger. So, how can we tell that our feelings are starting to build up before they get so big that we're out of control and being blown over? To answer this question, we're going to look at a thermometer. Now, normally this tool is used to help us measure the temperature of something, like how hot or cold it is. But it can also be used to show how big our feelings are. Some feelings can be really small and easy to handle, like when we feel calm or focused. Other feelings can be really big and make it hard to stay in control, like when we feel furious or anxious. Let's take the feelings thermometer and tip it over for a second. Now check this out. We can put numbers along the thermometer to identify how we're feeling. The bigger the number, the more intense our feelings and actions that go with them are likely to be. When we talk about the size of our feelings, there are three main questions to answer. First, what thoughts might I have? How does my body feel? And last, what things do I do when I feel this way? Let's break it down one level at a time. While we do this, remember, it is totally normal to have really big feelings or really small feelings. All of them are okay. What matters is what we do when our feelings get too big. You are at a level 1 when you feel good to go. You might feel happy, calm, or confident. You might think, I like this project. This is nice. Or I can do this. Our heart and breathing are slow and steady, and our bodies are relaxed. If I took a picture of you at school, a level 1 probably looks like you being on task and ready to learn. My favorite way to think of this level is the 3 C's. You feel cool, calm, and collected. You are at a level 2 when things are okay. You might feel bored, tired, or neutral. You might think, I wish we were at recess, or when's lunch? Your body probably feels sluggish or slow, and your mind may wander or daydream. You may be off task, but your heart and breathing are still slow and steady. A level 2 at school may look like you putting your head down or kind of staring out the window. A level 3 is when we start to have a problem. You could feel confused, worried, or disappointed. You might think, ugh, I failed the test again, or this is too hard. Your body is no longer calm. In fact, your tummy might start to hurt and your heart and breathing may start to rise a bit. A level 3 may look like you softly crying or even just giving up on trying. This level is so important because that uncomfortable feeling you feel at a level 3 is your body telling you that you need to ask for help. At a level 4, you have become pretty worked up. You might feel anxious, scared, or frustrated. You might think, I can't follow along. This doesn't make any sense. My teacher is moving too fast and I can't take it anymore. Your body will start to send you clues that something is wrong at this level by beginning to increase your heart rate and breathing even more. You might notice that your muscles start to get tight and your face begins to get red and hot. A level 4 may look like you crumbling up your work or arguing and refusing to accept help from an adult. A level 5 happens when you are completely out of control. Your feelings have become so big that stopping them seems impossible. You might feel furious or terrified, and to be honest, there likely are not many thoughts happening during these moments. Your feelings are so intense that the only thing your brain can do is to try and keep you safe. Your heart is likely racing and your breathing is probably uneven, but going really fast. You may be so hot that you're sweating and your muscles are so tense that your body wants to take action right now. The problem is the things you may be doing at a level 5 to get rid of your body's buildup most likely are not safe. You may be screaming at other people, throwing objects, running away and hiding, or just being destructive. When your feelings get too big, it's important to listen to the trusted adults that are around you and can help you calm down. When you're ready, try telling them how you're feeling and why. Adults are better able to problem solve with you when they know how you're feeling. Your feelings are your body's way of telling you that something might be wrong. Knowing how to identify the difference between small feelings that we can cope with and big feelings that are overwhelming is an important step to getting the help we need. Teachers and parents, for activity ideas that go along with this video, visit SEL Sketches.
So that's a nice technique that we often use with children and young people in the work that we do, is that kind of thermometer. And this can be really helpful for kind of helping them to understand the intensity of different emotions and help them begin to name them, which is often a really good first step to having good conversations about mental health. So now, how would you start a conversation? So frequent conversations about mental health are more effective than just one big talk because it helps to normalise feelings and difficulties. And this means that if we're having frequent conversations, it can stop these things from maybe building up to the point that they're unmanageable. Over time, this will encourage your child to start their own conversations about mental health. So firstly, it's really important to pick our moments. So aiming for quiet moments when your child's not dysregulated, and separating well-being conversations from punitive conversations. So often we might suggest kind of doing it during everyday calm activities. So maybe when you're walking the dog or making dinner or you're in the car. Things that are going to feel non-threatening and maybe not like an interrogation. Use their language. This will show them that you're listening to them and understand. State what you've noticed and approach with curiosity. Sometimes we need a kind of nudge in the direction and remain non-judgmental. And following on from this, ask open questions first and then close them down if this is too difficult for them. So you can start off with kind of, oh, how are you feeling? And maybe if they're struggling with that, you can use I wonder statements. So I wonder if this situation has made you feel sad, worried, angry, whatever you've noticed. And ask questions rather than providing reassurance. We would call this curious questioning. So instead of saying, you're going to be fine, which does feel helpful and it's a natural response, asking them questions to help guide them to that conclusion independently. And share your own feelings within reason. This will help normalise having difficult emotions. Some other tips we have are around validation. So validate their feelings. Tell them that it's okay to feel these emotions. Empathise with them that sounds really difficult. This means that we're not going to minimise their thoughts by just telling them that they're fine. Check your understanding. So again, using their language, but also using their tone. Repeat back what they're saying. Saying things like, can I just check I understand? This not only makes sure that you understand what's going on, but also gives them the opportunity to feel heard and correct you if maybe you do have the wrong end of the stick. Keep neutral facial expressions. So we're not saying have a poker face, but try to avoid extreme reactions like shock because this could discourage them. It might make them feel like they've said something wrong. And allow silence, even if it does feel uncomfortable sometimes. At times, we need time to think or process what we want to say, especially with difficult topics, and especially with children where they might not know the words. Don't ask questions several times or interrupt. Allow time to sit with silence and process. We've got some examples here of statements or questions that we might use when approaching these conversations, using these different strategies that we've gone over. So firstly, we have, I'm sorry you've been worrying so much about this situation. Do you think that's a likely outcome or a worst case scenario? You can see here that the empathy's there and also the questioning, those open questions and helping to guide them to their own conclusions and maybe challenge those worries a little bit. I notice that you're worrying about this. What is your most feared outcome of this situation? So again, it's using those nudges, that I wonder kind of strategy, and again, asking what they actually think is going to happen. And finally, I can hear that sounds really difficult, frustrating, stressful for you. What do you think the main emotion you're feeling is? Here we've got that empathy, that validation, that questioning, but also helping them to name their emotion. If your child is struggling to ask for help, try to encourage them to use these phrases. I am feeling, I need help with, do you have time to talk? I have a problem, can you help? This is making me feel, and I would like to talk about. These are some really straightforward phrases that they can use to try and begin these conversations and ask for help. We also know that not everybody finds spoken language easy, or some people might have difficulties with that. And there are other ways to go around this. There's some suggestions here on the right-hand side. So we've got drawing how they're feeling. Children use drawing to express their feelings and their thoughts, so this can be a really helpful way for you to understand. They can also write down what they're feeling or what they need. And finally, having planned signals or code words to express their thoughts and emotions. So this could be using coloured cards. Similar to what we talked about in the video before with the thermometer, different cards could flag different levels of that thermometer. We also have young people who use things like emojis to indicate when they're feeling sad or upset or anxious. And these are some different techniques you can use if spoken language isn't an option. So just a disclaimer before we move on to the next part, the next couple of slides are going to discuss self-harm and suicide and how to approach these conversations. If this is a difficult topic for you, please feel free to step out or leave the webinar for 5 minutes, or if you're watching on YouTube, skip ahead. Make sure that you take care of your own well-being. I'm just going to give a little pause for anyone to do that. So we're going to begin with thinking about what is self-harm and suicidal thoughts. So when we talk about self-harm, we're talking about a situation where a young person hurts themselves on purpose. This can be a range of different things, like cutting, burning, poisoning, and bruising. It can also include things that are less obvious, such as neglecting their own needs or taking risks. It's important for parents to know that self-harm is not uncommon. Many young people experience overwhelming emotions at some point, and at least 10% of young people have said they've self-harmed at some point. For most, it's not wanting to die, but a way of coping with feelings that feel too big or too confusing to manage in any other way. Suicidal thoughts are different. These are thoughts around not wanting to be alive anymore or feeling like life is too difficult to continue. These can range from fleeting thoughts to more persistent ones. Even though self-harm and suicidal thoughts are not the same thing, there is a connection. Having a history of self-harm is one of the strongest risk factors for suicide. More than half of young people who die from suicide have self-harmed in the past. This doesn't mean that every young person who self-harms has suicidal thoughts, but it does mean that we need to take it seriously and respond with care, curiosity, and support. We will now look at how you can support your child if they have self-harmed or are experiencing suicidal thoughts. When you're worried that a young person may be self-harming or having suicidal thoughts, the first thing to focus on is staying calm. Even though you might feel shocked, frightened, or overwhelmed inside, taking slow breaths helps you to respond in a way that feels safe and steady for both of you. If you are worried that someone you care for may be self-harming, start the conversation. Be explicit. Be honest and open with them about what you've noticed and why you're concerned. Let them know that you are there to listen, that you love them, and that won't change. Young people often fear being judged or getting into trouble, so hearing that reassurance can make it easier for them to open up. If they're unwilling to talk right now, give them space. Reassure them that you're still there to listen whenever they're ready, and remind them that there are people who can help. Sometimes simply knowing the door is open is enough to help them feel less alone. In the moment, the priority is safety. That might mean helping them move to a calmer space, checking whether they need first aid or simply staying with them until the intensity of the feelings pass. You don't need to have all the answers. Your presence and steadiness alone are what matter most. It can also help to look at coping strategies together. This might include distraction techniques, grounding exercises, delaying urges, or using supportive apps. Different things work for different people, so it's about exploring options rather than expecting one strategy to fix everything. Supporting a young person who is struggling can be emotionally draining, so looking after yourself is essential. Taking time to rest, talking to someone that you trust, and acknowledge your own feelings helps you to stay resilient and able to support them over time. And finally, try to keep the rest of life as normal as possible. Routine, connection, and consistency help young people feel secure. Knowing what support and services are available means you can reach out for help when you need it. You don't have to navigate this alone. Talking about self-harm and mental health isn't a one-off moment. It's something that needs gentle revisiting over time. Young people often open up gradually, not all at once, and each conversation builds trust. Continuing to check in shows them that you haven't forgotten, you haven't lost patience, and you are still there. These conversations don't always need to be heavy. Sometimes it's simply asking how they're doing today, or noticing a small change and checking in with curiosity rather than judgment. Keeping the dialogue open also helps normalise talking about emotions. When young people see that you can handle these topics calmly and kindly, they're more likely to come back to you when things feel overwhelming. Progress won't always be linear, and some days they may want to talk and other days they may shut down, and that's okay. What matters is that you continue to offer connection, reassurance, and space. Every conversation, even the short ones, reinforces safety and strengthens your relationship. Knowing when to reach out for professional help is an important part of supporting a young person who may be self-harming or experiencing suicidal thoughts. As parents and carers, you are often the first to notice when something is changing, and trusting those instincts really matters. One clear sign to seek further support is when the self-harm or suicidal thoughts are increasing in frequency or intensity. If things seem to be escalating, or if the young person is finding it harder to cope than before, that's a strong indicator that they need additional support. Another key moment is when you notice other difficulties emerging alongside the self-harm, such as anxiety, low mood, withdrawal, or a loss of interest in things they usually enjoy. These changes can signal that their emotional load is becoming too heavy to manage alone. And of course, if you are ever concerned about their immediate safety, it's important to act. That might mean staying with them, removing anything that could cause harm, or seeking urgent help if you feel that they are at risk in that moment. You don't have to make that judgment alone. Reaching out for support is a responsible and caring step. There are several places you can turn to. A GP is often the first point of contact that can help arrange further assessment or support. Schools can also play a role, especially if the child feels more comfortable talking to someone there. Specialist charities and helplines can also offer guidance, reassurance, and practical steps. And in an emergency, contacting urgent or emergency services is absolutely appropriate. The most important message is that you are not expected to manage this on your own. Professional support can make a huge difference, and reaching out early can help prevent things from becoming overwhelming for both you and your child. This slide reminds you that if your child ever reaches a point where things feel unsafe, you don't have to manage things alone. In a crisis, the most important thing is to stay calm as you can and reach out for help quickly. Encourage your child to tell an adult they trust, and if you're ever worried about their immediate safety, then contact emergency services. There are also national helplines available offering confidential support. On the right-hand side, you can see that there's a crisis text line, which you can text YM to 85258. There's Samaritans, which you can call at 116123, and Childline at 0800 1111, or you can go to their website to text or email. So we've discussed how we can have conversations about mental health, but we also wanted to talk about how to support your child in the moment. So when children are experiencing heightened emotions which affect their breathing and heart rate, practicing deep breathing techniques helps to increase their oxygen intake. This sends the brain a message to relax, and it calms down the stress response in the body, which in turn helps the child to feel more relaxed and calm. So we have a few examples here. We've got square breathing, where we would use our finger and trace around a square object or an imaginary square with our finger. We would breathe in slowly up one side for 4 seconds, in through our nose, and out slowly through our mouth for another 4 seconds along the other side. We would then repeat it for the other sides, and we can repeat this square shape as many times as needed until we feel calm. We have hot chocolate breathing, where we would pretend that we have our hands wrapped around a nice warm mug of hot chocolate. We breathe slowly in through our nose for 4 seconds as if we're smelling that delicious chocolate, and then breathe out very slowly through our mouth for 4 seconds as though we're blowing it to cool it down. And again, repeating it as many times as is needed. We have 5-finger breathing, where we would place our hand outstretched in front of us and spread our fingers. And with our other hand, we would place one finger at the base of our thumb. And as we trace up each finger for about 4 seconds, we breathe in through our nose slowly, take a short pause at the top, and then trace down for 4 seconds slowly while breathing out again, and continue to do it for each of our fingers. And finally, we have balloon breathing, where we would place one hand on our stomach and imagine we have a balloon in our belly. As we breathe in slowly through our nose, we imagine slowly inflating the balloon in our belly to be as big as possible, and then breathing out through our mouth and imagining the balloon deflating completely. And again, repeating as many times as needed to feel calm. I also wanted to introduce you to something called a self-soothe box. Self-soothe boxes can help us regulate our emotions by including items which target the 5 senses. This can be a mixture of different things, usually that are comforting or soothing or distracting. This video explores how to make a self-soothe box and examples of what other people have included in theirs.
It's perfectly normal to feel a little bit more anxious, angry, sad or panicked during these times. However, there are things we can do to make us feel more calm and at peace with our situation.
One of the things that can help you with that is having a self-soothe box.
A self-soothe box is a box or a bag or a container or whatever you have that you can fill with things that might help you feel calm and help you ground yourself when you're feeling a bit panicky or anxious or stressed out or down.
The first thing I have in here is a fidget toy.
My first thing is my old Nintendo DS.
Starters, I've got this little fidget toy.
When you're feeling more anxious and stressed, sometimes it can be nice to have something to do that isn't necessarily connected to the internet.
Lavender oil. Lavender is a smell that always makes me feel calm and soothes me, so I find that if I just drop a few bits onto my clothing or my bed sheets, that it might make me feel a little bit calmer at the moment.
Sour Skittles. I find that sour sweets like Skittles or Sour Patch Kids really help sort of ground me out of panicking, so I can like just have a couple of them and then it will like calm me down from being able to focus on the strong taste.
A really cute picture of my dogs who always cheer me up.
I really like doing like hair masks, and I have a face mask here. I think it's just like a quite nice little bit of self-care to do.
Earplugs, because sometimes when you're anxious, everything can seem like a bit too much. So it's always nice to have something that can help you block out the world.
I also have some quotes that I relate to specifically, things to remind me of my inner strengths, my core values, and all of these things.
A colouring book and a little tin of colouring pencils.
We can win. Greatness lies in you. Greatness lies in all of us.
So that gives you a little idea of what people might include in their self-soothe boxes. And I find these really helpful when working with young people. It really targets those 5 senses and it can be really personalised. And it can also be a nice fun activity for you to do with your children. And you can have those conversations around mental health and about what helps you support them while you're doing it. So the take-home messages of this webinar are that talking about mental health fosters an open and supportive environment. Our thoughts, feelings and behaviours are all connected. Be curious and ask open questions, and encourage your child to use helpful coping strategies such as naming emotions, breathing techniques and self-soothe boxes. We've got some useful links for supporting children and young people's mental health here, including the Mind website, Children North East, the Kooth app and website, the Mix website, Young Minds, and Papyrus. These websites and services all have useful resources that you can access at home to support your children. And again, just to reiterate, the helplines that are available and that a mental health crisis is an emergency when a child or young person's emotional or physical well-being is at immediate risk. And in these situations, it's important to get help quickly. If there's an immediate risk to life, then contact emergency services by calling 999. Thank you for attending the webinar today and for watching. There's a QR code and a link there. We would absolutely love your feedback. Thank you.